Hello everyone. Good morning from Calgary, or good evening or good afternoon if you're tuning in from abroad. We are going to be starting here shortly. We'll give the room a minute or two to fill up, and then we'll get started. I see there's a few people coming in the room here, which is great. Maybe I'll start with a few of the housekeeping things. So first of all, as most folks here know already, we do have a chat function that is enabled at the bottom of your screen. I'd ask everybody that is coming, please introduce yourself, where you're dialing in from, what part of the hydrogen value chain you belong to. And of course, we'd ask everybody to keep your comments respectful, please, which I have no doubt that you will. So it'd be great to hear where some of the folks are dialing in from, especially for these international focused webinars. In addition to the chat, we do have a Q&A button at the bottom next to the chat function. I'd encourage everybody, if you do have questions, please pop them in the Q&A. It'll just make it a bit easier for us to filter through the chats and the questions. And we'll make sure to try our best to get our panelists to answer them in the Q&A session. So this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website, calgaryhydrogen.ca, in the next week at some point, as usual. So I'm seeing a few folks here. I'm seeing Manitoba, seeing a Corner Brook. Okay, great to see a few folks from places other than Calgary. So please, folks, please let us know where you're dialing in from. So while we continue to wait for some folks to arrive, I just wanted to let everybody know that we will be announcing our future upcoming events on our LinkedIn page, Calgary Region Hydrogen Hub, and through our mailing list. So really, I encourage everybody here, to ensure you don't miss anything, any of the activities or events or things that we're up to. Please follow us on LinkedIn and sign up for our mailing list at calgaryhydrogen.ca. And we'll be having some interesting reports coming out here very, very soon, as well as we'll be having our next Hub at the Pub event next month in March on the 25th, which we'll have some sign up links for here soon. So I see a few folks from Calgary, seeing Leslie from the North Atlantic, taking hydrogen technician program. That's very exciting. Nisku, Alberta, wonderful. Akin, okay, great. So maybe what we could do, since some people are in the chat there and people have joined, we'll do a land acknowledgement. So the hub, located in the heart of southern Alberta, both acknowledges and pays tribute to the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, which includes the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Districts 5 and 6. So now that we've started this webinar in a good way, and we certainly have some folks joining from around the world, I really want to introduce myself, and my name is Zach Cunningham, for those who don't know, and I do lead the Calgary Region Hydrogen Hub. First of all, I want to thank everybody in attendance today for taking time out of their busy work days to come and learn a bit about the hydrogen story in Germany. This is the second webinar that will examine what's happening in the hydrogen ecosystem outside of North America. So today we are very lucky and very fortunate to have Fabian Müller-Lutz with us today to share on this topic. So Fabian, I'm going to apologize as I read your bio. I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce quite a few words, but Fabian is a senior specialist in the hydrogen and renewables energy at IHK Aachen. Fabian brings over a decade of expertise in driving the energy transition within the North Rhine-Westphalia region. Currently serving as the project leader for the Hydrogen Hub Aachen, he plays a pivotal role in developing regional hydrogen ecosystems and infrastructure. His extensive background includes high-impact roles at the Energy Agency North Rhine-Westphalia and the Region Aachen-Schwacherband, where he managed regional climate protection initiatives. An alumnus of the RWTH Aachen and the University of Nottingham, he combines both a strong academic foundation with deep practical experience in navigating the complexities of regional energy transformation and sustainable development. That is one heck of a bio, Fabian. We're very blessed to have you here to share with us. So I want to say, first of all, I understand it's quite late for you in Germany, late afternoon. I want to thank you in advance for working late to facilitate this webinar with us. I think here in Canada, we really are in a bit of an echo chamber. We hear Canadian news, we hear news out of the US, certainly more so than anything. And I think it's really important and refreshing to hear a little bit about what's happening in Europe, and particularly in Germany. We often hear that Germany is making great strides in hydrogen, and it'll be good to drill down a little bit deeper into some of the specific projects happening in Germany, Aachen, and maybe with that, I'll let you take it away and share your screen if you're ready, Fabian.
Yeah, thank you, Zach, and thanks for having me and the kind introduction. I'm going to share my screen, and then I hope to give you a bit of an overview about what's going on in Germany regarding hydrogen and in the Aachen region especially. I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Working for
Yeah,
me, Fabian.
brilliant. Brilliant. And I hope it's going on. If you got any questions, I think they'll be written in the chat and you pass them on later on. And if anything's not working, just feel free to interrupt me. So I'm going to start off with a bit of an overview. You can see here a map. Basically, it's Western and Central Europe where we are located. You can see the red dot in the middle. That's roughly about where we are in Germany, in the very western part of Germany, bordering on Belgium and the Netherlands. From the point where I'm sitting at the moment, it's basically 3 kilometers or 4 kilometers to the so-called Dreiländerpunkt, where the borders of Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands meet. And as you can also see on the screen, it's also a bit of a spot where a plant or already hydrogen infrastructure is already being built. You can see here projected pipelines. You can see offtakes. When you get the presentation, I think, Zach, you'll be forwarding them afterwards to the participants. I also put a link in for this hydrogen map where you can get a deeper look into it. I go down a bit further. Regarding Germany, I'll just give you a bit of a climate data. It's not like Canada, even though we've got a very small coast to the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. We've got a very maritime climate where it's more humid and the temperatures are not that extreme. But also, as you can see on the red line here, we are also affected by climate change and rising temperature, which leads to droughts and also heavy rains and floodings becoming more frequently in our region, and also the gaps between the temperatures are becoming a bit more extreme, I think, not from a Canadian point of view, but just today we're having 17 degrees Celsius, which is unusual for February. It's unusually warm. Usually it would be 2 or 5 degrees Celsius or even -2, but still things are as they are. So that means hydrogen and the change of climate transition is something where we're working on, especially in our region, which is affected by the lignite phase. This is something I will come up later. I give you also a broad overview about the energy data in Germany. I hope you can see my screen on the right-hand side. Just give you an overview of the electricity generation in Germany over the last year. As you can see, we're having a huge chunk of renewable energies in the system, which is on the one hand is a good thing because we're having days where there's basically nearly all of the electricity in the grid from renewables, but that also leads to challenges, or even have to say it, problems, because we've completed a nuclear phase out, but still we're relying on fossil fuels like coal, lignite, which is a large part in our area, especially, and fossil gas, which doesn't necessarily make us CO2 neutral, even though we're having a huge chunk of renewable energies in the systems. And also we're facing the challenge that the system costs are rising, but especially as we need to extend our grid, we have to build and ramp up a grid to get to meet the challenges of renewable electricity, which is quite volatile, and therefore we also need storage and baseload power plants to stabilize the grid, which is something where we're working on, which is also part of a lot of issues regarding hydrogen hinge upon, because we got lots of battery storage coming up, but still it's a challenge for grid operators and also for project managers to keep the grid stable, to ensure the energy supply, especially if you got the so-called Dunkelflaute, when there's no wind blowing or no, and the sun is not shining, which is something I haven't had, especially in the winter, over a couple of days. And without fossil fuels at the moment, it would be quite challenging to meet that. Okay, then I go back to hydrogen in Germany. I hope my screen, because I gave you an overview about hydrogen hubs and valleys in Germany as a whole. The green and blue dots there denote the German states, the so-called Bundesländer, and I have to apologize. I have to find a more up-to-date map sometime. But as you can see here, because this map is 4 years old, there's lots of initiatives and also active regarding hydrogen all over Germany, pushing their own hydrogen projects, connecting hydrogen initiatives, setting up projects, being supportive. And some that are really successful are not even really mentioned here, like the Hydrogen Valley Emsland. This is the H2 region Emsland, which is located roughly here in the northwestern part of Germany, where there's a lot of renewable energy, but also natural gas and oil. And they are having one of the greatest largest electrolyzer projects that are currently being built in Germany. RWE, one of the great German energy suppliers, is building I think 300 megawatt electrolyzer there to produce green hydrogen and to send it on there, to use it there from there on in refineries. And also, I think in mobility, but the largest off-taker is a refinery which is located in Leuna, which is Sachsen-Anhalt, Saxony-Anhalt, which is over here, which is roughly 300 kilometers away. So that means we are already talking about policies and about how Germany will address hydrogen, but I come to the infrastructure a bit later. As you can see, we've got a bit of a fragmented landscape with lots of regional initiatives, but there's also an overarching national strategy, which has been set up in 2020 and has been updated in 2025, just as recently as last year, which projects a demand of roughly about 100 terawatt hours per year in 2030, and also sets us an electrolysis target of roughly 10 gigawatts in 2030. I have to admit, even though I'm saying there are projects being built at the moment, we're also facing, I have to be honest about it, also facing the problem that projects regarding green hydrogen are being stopped or being delayed. So we're not sure whether we will reach these targets. I'm personally, I remain a bit skeptical that we will do this. Another thing that will be quite challenging is that we are expecting 70% of hydrogen imports from different countries, including Canada, but also our neighbors like Belgium and the Netherlands. The ports of Antwerp and Rotterdam on the North Sea are quite close to North Rhine-Westphalia and Aachen, where I'm sitting, but also from the North Sea ports in Germany, like Wilhelmshaven, Emden, get down to the Ems Valley, or Bremen or Hamburg. Also from Scandinavia via pipelines through the Baltic Sea, even though that is a bit of a geopolitical challenge in the current climate. But also, I have to say, if you want to have a deeper look into the German hydrogen landscape and deeper traditions, I have to warn you that it can be quite confusing, because there, in addition to the National Hydrogen Strategy, the Nationale Wasserstoffstrategie, or NWS short, there are 13 other H2 strategies at state level, or Länderebene in German, but also lots of regional strategies, which have been funded actually by the German Ministry of Transport over the last couple of years to ramp up hydrogen, especially for heavy duty mobility in public transport. So as you see, they're setting some targets, and Germany and hydrogen is assumed to play a role in the German energy system, but we're still not sure where it will come to pass first. A huge part used to be in mobility, especially public transport. This is where the first projects are already working successfully. Other things aiming at heavy duty transport, but also in industry, refineries, for example, have to fulfill a goal. And there's also huge efforts that are being undertaken, the power plant strategy, or Kraftwerksstrategie, of the German federal government to get CO2 neutral or fossil-free gas plants, e.g. hydrogen plants, to stabilize the grid and to really phase out coal, lignite, and other fossil fuels. Still, I've talked a lot about strategy, but as I must say, as the saying goes, amateurs talk about strategy and professionals talk about logistics. And a big issue regarding hydrogen in Germany or anywhere when it comes to deployment is the logistics. How can it get from the production point, from the point of production to the off-taker? And to address this issue, the German government, in cooperation with the grid operators, the Fernleitungsnetzbetreiber, I'm sorry, I have to bother you with all these horrible German compound words, have set up a design and permitted a so-called core grid, Kern. It's a hydrogen backbone, which will stretch all over Germany, and nearly 10,000 kilometers of pipeline are planned. Some of them are already being built, and it should connect industry points, and distribution systems, power plants, and off-takers like steel industry, glass manufacturers, and especially chemical industry. We're having a lot here in the Rhine area and also down here at Ludwigshafen. You probably know big companies like BASF, Bayer, Covestro, and so on. And Shell has run a big refinery on the banks of the River Rhine near Cologne, and they also need green hydrogen. They also have to fulfill a quota, so their hydrogen will be in demand, and it's being built, starting to being built. We at the moment, some of these lines are already being built. For example, that one down here from Emden towards the Ruhr area is one of the answers. Is already there's already work in progress. But also, if you look to our region, which is basically here, the dotted line, where we'll be connected to the point of Antwerp. And the first step is already about to get planning permission. The first part of this new built pipeline from the Belgian border. The Belgians already have the pipeline nearly in the ground, or working, or quite close to finishing it, to here, to the middle, where there is now it's a lignite power plant, but that shall be converted into a hydrogen powered gas plant. And once the government has given green light for the project, this part will also be built, which also already means that we and other initiatives, but also the government, the grid operators, energy suppliers, and a constant exchange with distribution grid operators and possible off-takers to meet, to find out what are the actual requirements regarding planning and infrastructure, which is a challenge because I've mentioned the big companies in Germany, but you probably heard about the famous German Mittelstand, the small and medium-sized enterprises which are scattered all over Germany. And they are also quite energy intensive industries, for example, in glass manufacturing, copper manufacturing, lead manufacturing, welding, and so on. And some of them will require some kind of molecules when it comes to their transition. And to be honest, we've got different tiers of the gas grid in Germany, the big, huge pipelines, the transport grid, but also the smaller distribution grid. And roughly about 99% of all German enterprises, industry enterprises, are connected to the distribution grid. So it will be a challenge for them to be connected to the core grid and get access to hydrogen, which is an issue we're also trying to address via decentralized projects, but I'll give you an overview more of that later, I think. Okay, then come to next one. I'll give you a bit of the regional point of view. As you can see, this is the map of North Rhine-Westphalia, the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, bordering in the north to Niedersachsen here, Belgium and the Netherlands. You can see Aachen there. You can see roughly the projected new hydrogen pipeline coming from Belgium, passing Aachen in the south, and then going towards Cologne and the Rhine. That will be connected to other pipelines coming from North Sea via the Netherlands or via Lower Saxony. And our challenges regarding hydrogen, or our issues, why we're dealing with hydrogen from a regional perspective, is one. We are a region which is the Rhenish mining area, where there's a lot of lignite. And there's a phase out which is accelerating, and it shall be finished in latest 2038, which means we face the transition from a region that has been exporting energies for decades or even centuries to a region that now has to import energies. Meanwhile, we've got lots of companies and R&D, especially universities, the RWTH Aachen University or the Research Center at Jülich have a very high competence in energy technologies, also in hydrogen. We've got our own hydrogen cluster at Jülich that is dealing only with how hydrogen can be ramped up to the market. But we've got also a lot of hydrogen competences in our local business and our local enterprises. For example, like Neumann and Esser, which is a compressor manufacturer located in nearby Übach-Palenberg from Aachen. It's a small town you probably never heard of. We've got Nprox, they're manufacturing hydrogen tanks. I think they've actually got a Canadian owner. We've got a company like EcoClean, also manufacturing equalizers, but also, especially as in Germany, when we talk about hydrogen, we mostly mean green hydrogen. We've got competences regarding project developers for green energies who can design the necessary power purchase agreements that fit in the complicated regulatory framework. We've got off-takes like buses, but I'll show you that a bit later. And still, the branch of the backbone that is will be built here is set to be finished in roughly 3 years time. So be one of the regions that get a very early connection to the to the backbone, which is something we have to set up. We don't want to be a part of the country where hydrogen is just pumped through. We want to participate from that. And besides from that, we've got a very interesting project of decentralized electrolysis in Jülich, in Heinsberg, and also in the Eifel region. So what are the challenges? Why are we dealing it with the regional initiatives? When we were starting with the Hydrogen Hub, we noticed that we had a lot of the know-how, the competences we have at university level are absolutely known for everyone. But now the know-how of our local industries just flew below the radar. So we made out there was a need to coordinate all the things and help to develop regional strategy, have a go-to point for people from outside to connect with us, and also to besides from being a focal point, help and connect businesses and enterprises how to create new business models, especially if they're affected by the lignite phase out. They need a new business model, for example, or other more accelerating decarbonization. We've got lots of supplies for the car manufacturers. They've got lots of competence that can be of use in a hydrogen economy. And how can we generate added value for them and our region by informing them, connecting them with players in the hydrogen industry, and helping them to identify viable pathways for their transformations. So, and that's what we were doing. We were founded roughly 5 years ago. We have set up a network with lots of partners from industries, research, also administrative bodies, because administration, bureaucracy is a big issue in Germany, and regulation as well. I don't want to bore you because I'm afraid it would be a real downer. But we try and we set up to ensure there's a knowledge transfer between companies, between research institutions, and to position our innovative small and medium enterprises in the hydrogen economy. And we are also connecting our businesses with amongst each other, but also with other initiatives. We're working in the Hydrogen Valley Rhine-Ruhr with partners from the Ruhr area, from the Rhine area near Cologne, but also from Belgium and the Netherlands and abroad, for example, here like in Canada. And we're setting up networking events, business speed datings, and so on and so forth, also giving inputs to various topics regarding hydrogen from a research point of view, to keep people up with the latest technology developments, but also, which is a big issue, the latest regulatory changes. As far as you have a closer look at the map, I can see I have here highlighted a few points of view. We've got a map on our website. If you scan the QR code here, you can have a deeper look in, because behind every of these dots, there's a company, a project behind. And you can see we've got hydrogen machinery plant and engineering. We've got companies like Isatec who are developing hydrogen systems. You've got NPROX, as I mentioned, Neumann Esser, NEA, EcoClean, or Schöllerwerk, which are located in the south of a region in the Eifel Mountains. They're quite interesting because they're a steel pipe manufacturer who not only produce hydrogen-ready steel pipes, but they're also planning to use hydrogen for their energy transition. They're planning with a local electrolyzer on their site, and for them the aim is they don't use hydrogen as an energy carrier, but as an inert gas, as a process gas for their manufacturing process. But at the moment, they get their hydrogen by trailer. And this is a quite sensitive supply chain because in Germany, hydrogen is declared a dangerous good, which means it can't be transported at all weathers. And if you got icing on the street or if there's a traffic jam or whatever, and the trailer is not coming, they have to scale down production or have to find workarounds. And for them, it would be a trade-off for higher hydrogen price in the first place if they would be self-sufficient on that point. Still, we've also got, as I mentioned before, green hydrogen production at Jülich, which is roughly here, and Aachen at the university, and Heinsberg. These projects are about to go live in the next couple of months or even weeks. And we've also got applications. The buses in the district of Düren, one of our partners in the network, are there's replacing their diesel bus fleet with a hydrogen bus fleet, which is actually working because they've got long running overline and in the district of Euskirchen. One of our partners there is the RVK. They're operating the largest hydrogen bus fleet in Europe. They're also quite active in the Cologne area. And also we've got, as I said, process gas. The power plant, which will replace hopefully the lignite plant, which will be running on hydrogen, will be located here right in the middle of a region. And we are also be having we're also having lots of other use cases because there, as you can see here, this is basically where the city of Stolberg is located, where we've got lots of energy-intensive industries like glass making, lead manufacturer, copper manufacturing, and they're located quite close to the backbone, and the industry there will be connected by a grid. I think as soon as the pipeline is being built, and they're already working how they can use hydrogen there. But there's still some questions that have to be answered, especially when it comes to how will ovens react, how can the processes be adapted. Then last not least, I'm going to give you a bit of an outlook for my quick overview because I hope it's not too long. I've dubbed it a bit chances and challenges for hydrogen in Germany. I think we've got a big chance. We've got a few successes as we're having first really interesting successful use cases in mobility, such as public transport, and also in industry. Infrastructure is getting into place, and we've got the technology available. There's lots of technology supplies. We've got their products ready for the hydrogen economy. So basically, we have to, on the one hand, we just have to roll it out. But still, we have to deal with some real issues here. We have to face the issue of economic viability, which is one thing that all hinges on, especially as hydrogen is quite too expensive at the moment to really replace natural gas, for example, in the steel industry at the moment. There are some instruments that the German government is trying to use to bridge that gap to get it on, but still it leads to several issues as projects are being delayed. Some are even canceled, but it also deals that we're having a problem or an issue. The challenge is a very prohibitive regulation, especially from a European point of view, because I don't know if you're aware of this. Some things in Germany or in Europe general are regulated by the European Union, and they set up a definition of what is actually a green or CO2 neutral hydrogen. And this is actually a really prohibitive and not very pragmatic definition. And this affects the bankability of projects and also leads to a higher price. Still, I think there are also some new chances, and we hope that this regulation is going to be, and we're working on that. We're having a better, more pragmatic regulation, so we can really accelerate the ramp up. But still, I think there's also some new chances coming up, which are developing, which I mean, new application. There's aviation, which is accelerating, especially it's more research topic. There's also something that are quite concrete. Data center, for example, are exploring whether hydrogen is an option for their gensets. And also in defense, there are some projects being mudded because Rheinmetall, one of the big German defense companies, is planning electrolyzers scattered all over Germany to produce e-fuels, to ensure a decentralized fuel supply for military applications, which is something which is sadly necessary, but there's only Poland between us and Russia, and we don't know how things work out there in the future. We have to be aware for everything, sadly. And the other thing, which is quite interesting, that is that in mobility, especially heavy-duty trucks, I think is something where North America and Canada, also the US, is a bit more advanced than we are. But our OEMs are also getting into the market with new trucks, with hydrogen internal combustion engines or fuel cell trucks. And there's also a very intelligent funding that's being set up in Germany. Still, we have to get projects market ready and have them to make them really, really reliable for these applications. And also, especially when it comes to trucks, they have to be available. Then the last thing where I think we've got chances, we've got lots of international hydrogen corporations where our government has been traveling the globe to sign agreements with our European neighbors, but also I think with Canada. Our chancellor was in India a couple of weeks ago. But we have to ensure the supply chains and have to ramp up our own production, which is something which is coming, because due to the delay and the euphoria that is no longer there, we've now got the tough guys in the market who really go for it, and they're pushing their projects too. And I'm quite optimistic that we see a lot more of hydrogen applications in Germany over the next couple of years, I think. I'm not sure they'll be all where it is projected, because I think the decentralized projects will be the first to act, especially as our Mittelstand is quite agile. And if they say we see a chance in there, then we do it. For example, there's a brick manufacturer company in Münster who has won a subsidy to use hydrogen, and they're planning to switch completely from natural gas to hydrogen, which is going to be quite interesting. But still, we have another issue, which is bad press, or as I say it, champagne debates. I don't know if you heard that, but there's a German scientist who said a couple of years ago, and it's I think it's a really, really bad analogy, because she dubbed hydrogen as the champagne of energy transition. However, then she said it should be used only in heavy industries, but I don't. But this is the equivalent to replace the beverages at a Bavarian beer festival with champagne. So I don't think that's quietly working that quick. But I think if we get a more sensible debate on that, a more productive, constructive debate on that, and we are willing to learn. This is something I think this is also an issue, because some projects in Germany that have been cancelled, that have failed, have not failed because of technology or minor technology details in some cases, but because there were just mistakes in the planning. And it will be interesting to see if we are really willing to take this learning curve. But if we do, then I think I'm optimistic, and I think we see a ramp up of hydrogen in Germany quite quickly, and hopefully in our region. As I said, there will be electrolyzer projects running up and running over the next couple of weeks, I think. And then we get our experience, and we're for our part, we're willing to take the learnings, because if you want to run a marathon and finish it successfully, you have to start jogging, have to train, and it won't go without setbacks. But I think we'll be successful there, and I remain optimistic thus far. And if you want to know more, do not hesitate with your question. I hope I could give you a bit of a good insight or a few insights. If I can ask any question, I'll try to look it up for you. But basically, I have to say thank you. They also see the partners of the Hydrogen Hub Aachen, the region of Aachen, the districts of Düren, Heinsberg, and Euskirchen. And please, if you got any questions to us directions, feel free to contact me or my colleague Kari Akile. We'll be happy to answer you. And if you want to know more or think that's quite interesting, this or that enterprise or whatever, we'd be happy to get in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Fabian. Thank you so much for that presentation. Now, I guess, we can talk. Okay.
I'm afraid I'm still sharing my screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait a moment. Wait a second. Just where's the cursor?
Always fun trying to figure out the
Yeah.
in a call.
It's
There
always,
there we
sorry.
go.
I have to apologize to everyone.
No, thank you so much. Hey, that was a wonderful presentation, Fabian. We've got so many questions that I think I don't even really need to use any of the questions I had planned for this. So first of all, we've had a lot of questions about imports to Germany, considering that it's been a big topic of discussion. In Canada here, we have the Canadian Hydrogen Association. We have a number of hubs. And I know today here in attendance, we have the Atlantic Hydrogen Alliance. A little shout out to Derek here. So I'm sure many of the folks in this call and many of the members of this Canadian Hydrogen Association and the Atlantic Hydrogen Alliance, they'd be very curious to understand the hydrogen import, where you see it coming, where you see the status of it as, and in particular, how Canada can play a role in that.
I try to answer as best as I can from a regional perspective, which is being connected to the port of Antwerp, where they're already trying ramping up an ammonia cracker to crack green ammonia to produce it into hydrogen. I think hydrogen hydrogen derivatives will be one thing will be coming there. They're becoming via ships from overseas, and especially if it's the Atlantic, I would remain optimistic, because I think there'll be solutions. For example, if the east coast of Canada, the Canadian Atlantic coast, produces green hydrogen, and they've got the terminals to ship it over to Europe, I say broadly, because for us, our ports, they're not German, they're Dutch and Belgium, I know, but it's closer from us to get to Antwerp than to Hamburg. I come from Hamburg. I was born there, so I don't have to. I'm not allowed to say this too loud, but still, that's basically European cooperation at its best. Then I think I remain optimistic. There's also the German government has set up an instrument called H2 Global to set up contracts with hydrogen manufacturers abroad, and also to get the offtake going to ensure there's a hydrogen supply. I think the ports will be the first points where larger scale applications will be up and running, because, as I said, Antwerp is working on an ammonia cracker. They got a small scale ammonia cracker for test purposes already running. They're planning for a larger cracker. from them to the German border, the pipelines already work. They're working on. I think they're nearly finished with it, and it's us Germans who are a bit late on this. Same goes also for Rotterdam, for Wilhelmshaven, for Emden, for Hamburg, Bremen or Bremerhaven, as it is. Um, Also on the Baltic coast, Lubmin, there's a gas terminal, um, where they be using it for hydrogen. So I think when it's the other side of the Atlantic from our point of view, I think it will take a couple of weeks. There are things to figure out, but I think there we can really establish a reliable logistic partner. I think Canada could participate as a hydrogen supplier also, and I think H2 Global is a good address to get in touch to, because they're basically funded by the German government to set up hydrogen contracts there.
Wonderful. Greatly appreciate that, Fabian. So maybe a little bit I can tug on that thread of the export
So
import story a little bit more. A few of the folks here today have recognized that the Hydrogen Acceleration Act, there was some news about that today,
yes,
maybe going through to maybe amend it to include blue hydrogen. Obviously, the logistics might be more challenging based on where we produce blue hydrogen in Canada, but is that going through? Did that go through? Is you kind of mentioned they're trying to ease the regulations a bit on
yeah.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry I missed that. That's because it's a new piece and it's not yet legislation, but I think it's a huge step in the right direction because it eases a lot of the issues regarding permissions for hydrogen projects, including pipelines, including crackers, and so on and so forth. So I think that really eases a lot of things at a regional level,
Okay.
or at a state level for permissions of hydrogen projects. And therefore, we appreciate it. I think there are some issues where they could have gone further, but it also has to come through a political process. And there, I think that's good. That's a good step. The big issue for us, and also when it comes to import, is the European regulation. I have to be quite frankly about it. I think, especially if they're in an Atlantic hydrogen alliance, they've heard about the delegated act of the European Union, which is my ceterum censeo. I think it has to be reworked, has to be made easier, especially also for imports, because it's really difficult to import hydrogen. And regarding blue hydrogen, the issue in Germany was that we were not having legislation for CO2 or CCS until a couple of months ago. So that's actually quite new, but we do appreciate it from our perspective. The IHK is the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we do appreciate it because I think, first of all, um, if there's a reduction of 70 or 60 or whatever percentage of carbon dioxide intensity, well, let's start work with it. There's a saying we're using quite a lot when it comes to hydrogen. The aim is green. The path is multicolored. So we think it can be useful, especially for the chemical industries, where they won't have any green hydrogen in the required quantities available anytime soon.
That's great, Fabian. Certainly here at the hub, we like to think, let's not let perfection be the enemy of the good, and we just got to get
Yeah,
using this stuff.
yeah,
We can progress from there,
yeah,
right? So, we have like lots and lots of
yeah.
questions, but we have another question. I would say it relates to, the transmission of hydrogen. You had a map, and there was a bunch of new hydrogen pipelines, and then you had some that were converted pipelines. So to
Yes.
touch on the converted pipelines part, we had a question. So were these existing pipelines that were transmitting natural gas, LNG, or are these pipelines that have not been used but are going to be converted? Are you able to comment on those at all?
Um, Well, it really depends because there's so many pipelines,
Sure.
but most of them, they used to be transporting natural gas or LNG, especially natural gas. There was a huge shift in the market over the last couple of years where they were switching from L gas to H gas. So there are some pipelines that have been made redundant, and they are redundant now, and they are being used. They're being repurposed for hydrogen usage.
And is there a lot of progress being made on that? Certainly, it's a popular discussion here. We have an extensive pipeline network
Uh,
in Alberta. Is there some significant technology advancements being made on being able to repurpose those pipelines?
I think, from what I gather from our grid distributors, they're saying it's not that big. It costs a bit of money. It's a bit of an effort, but it's not a big lot of a technology challenge. It's not such a big ask. They have to deploy new sensors, some measurements, some valves, and so on. But mostly they can use the existing pipelines. It's, for them, I think I'm not an expert of steel manufacturing, but depends on really what kind of pipeline you have. And there's also people working on in our network. We have a company which is called Future Pipe. They're also, for example, making from pipelines for hydrogen, I think from polyethylene or some kind of plastics, basically. Sorry to be that broad. I have to apologize for everyone who's deeper into technology. I hope you don't you don't hold this against me, but there's a lot of things undertaken, and we had a grid operator, Gelsenwasser, in our district. They had to refurbish a small piece of a distribution grid on their premises, which basically like it's been built in Germany since the 1990s. And they just refurbished for hydrogen usage, and what they found out was working perfectly.
Okay, okay, interesting, interesting. Yeah, maybe we could
Mhm.
talk a little bit about hydrogen as long-term energy storage. Certainly, it's a discussion here because we have great geology for, storing hydrogen underground potentially. Does that exist in Germany? Is that being planned for long-term energy storage or?
Yes, yes, exactly. It is. I should connect you, I think, to one of my colleagues a bit further north of Germany, in Lower Saxony, because they have been salt caverns there, and they are being converted for long-term hydrogen storage. And this is at the moment one of the big off-takers for green hydrogen up there.
Okay, interesting. So now with that long-term energy storage, I would imagine that that would tie into some of the power generation. You mentioned about wanting to get off of the lignite generation
Yeah,
sources that you're using currently, but the
yeah.
quantities would be vast to replace that to provide the same megawatts, gigawatts of energy. Is that the plan? And do you have a sense of the scale of, that undertaking to be able to provide peaking capacity or
I think this is a huge, is a controversial topic of discussion at the moment in Germany. How much is actually needed? How much will be needed? Will it be natural gas first? Will we go directly to hydrogen? Do all the plants have to be H2 ready? This is the aforementioned Kraftwerkstrategie where it really hinges. But I think at the moment, the government is planning with a capacity of, I think, 20 gigawatts for power plants strategy, um, which I think is can only be the beginning, because we when it first came up 2 years ago under the old government, they were talking about 50 gigawatts. So this is quite a reduction, and I think they have to aim for more. Uh, Not sure how it will work with other storages, other storage technologies like battery storages. But this is also a topic that is very intensely discussed at the moment in Germany. What do we actually need? How much do we actually need? And when should we plant it, where should we plant it, and so on and so forth.
It's the wonderful thing about energy transition. There are
Yeah,
always very vigorous conversations from many different people
yeah.
on what is the way forward. Maybe, at a very high level, certainly in Canada, we face the same challenge of there's a big gap between the cost of hydrogen versus the incumbent fuel, particularly because we have such cheap fossil fuels, natural gas here. And I think we struggle with how do we fill that gap? What is the mechanism for end users to make it more attractive? Not to go too deep into the weeds, but you said there was a couple mechanisms that Germany has to help fill that price gap. Is that end use subsidies, or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, we've got some kind of carbon contracts for difference.
Okay.
Some CFDs called Klimaschutzverträge, climate protection contracts, where a part of the gap is being subsidized if you, for example, switch to CO2 natural technology. Still, the issue is not they were awarded via a competition, and not many industries applied. Some have won it. One, for example, is the aforementioned brick manufacturer near Münster. They've won a CFD, and they're located quite close to the backbone as well. So it will be really interesting to see how things will be progressing there. And I think also a glass manufacturer near Cologne has got a CFD, and some big industry. One of the points that we were really, I think it's a good way for the ramp up. Still, you have to find a long-term solution. And one of the issues we had with the first round of these CFDs in Germany was that the small and medium enterprises could hardly participate. They were designed in a way where you had to be a really large scale company, and other companies, and this is a huge chunk of German industry, who already had quite intelligent concepts or ideas how they could employ hydrogen or other CO2 neutral energies. They were basically excluded by the design of the competition. But I think this is being addressed by the government, and I'm interested to see how the next round of these CFDs will be designed.
Great. Oh, that's very interesting. So maybe I could pivot a little bit to the mobility side of things. We're getting
Yeah.
a lot of questions. I guess I have a couple questions here. Um, from the German OEMs that you said are developing within, broader Germany, maybe Aachen
Yeah.
as well. I guess I would ask what classes of vehicles are these vocational, like garbage trucks, are these heavy duty haulers they're targeting, or a bunch of stuff? And the second question I would have is, are there hydrogen buses in Aachen? Is there some experience with the mobility from a municipal fleet perspective in Aachen?
Um, in Aachen itself, they're not, but Düren, that's 30 kilometers away. It's basically in the neighborhood, also at Heinsberg and at Cologne, which is 60 kilometers. They're running to Euskirchen, into our district as well, and there's a lot of experience that we're getting. There are some issues if you have of a technology that is in its infancy. For example, mostly the fuel cell buses are running quite smoothly, but sometimes they're facing issues that you just find out in the field. You just can't avoid in a laboratory. For example, the hydrogen bus, most of them are supplied with tanks by Mprox, and we were visiting Mprox just 2 weeks ago, and they were showing us one of the tanks, and they had an issue at Mannheim, where the buses with their tanks are supplied, which was basically a small plastic cap on the air supply, and that had fallen off during while the bus was riding, No one had noticed it. Then it was freezing, and the air supply, there was humidity, and it froze. The bus was no longer was not operational in the first place, and they had to address. They had a really quick fix for it. But something it came at the price of the buses being out of service for a couple of weeks, because one has to look at what's the issue to find it out, and that's what I meant. Are we willing to take these learning curves?
Great. And it may be on the OEM side of things.
Yeah, yeah. We are having a kind of garbage trucks. They're already running by phone. I'm not sure. I'm hearing different views on that. Some of them used to be quite successful. Other have been, especially the prototypes, have not been successful. An issue for them is at some points hydrogen supplies, because there has been the shift. Because I think that one of the great fuel station providers in Germany, H2 Mobility, has a bit of an issue with their strategy. They were aiming at cars, just normal cars, and I don't think that is a really successful area of usage for hydrogen in Germany, in such a dense populated country like Germany, where you're having hardly long distance compared by a country like Canada. Um, their batteries are more efficient and also more economically viable. But that means some stations have closed, and there's an issue how to get the hydrogen to my truck, and not that the technology is not working. When it comes to the OEM side of things, there's MAN and Daimler Truck. They're getting into the business. Daimler has got a 40-ton long-range fuel cell truck which uses liquid hydrogen. They've got a prototype which has been deployed very successful by Air Products, I think. They said publicly they had it running for a year, and they had a diesel truck on reserve in case there were any malfunctions and so on. But they only had to use the diesel truck for on a single day over the course of a year. So I think this was a successful trial. I think. And there are other companies, for example, like MAN. They have a hydrogen ECI, and smaller companies working on a Daimler platform like KEO, who are also having a hydrogen ECI, which is quite interesting for the logistic companies who want to deploy the trucks, because they cost half the price of a fuel cell truck. They're reliable, and for them, it's not really, I think it's not really an issue whether they've got liquid hydrogen or gaseous hydrogen. They're running on both.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I see our hour is up, Fabian. It flew by. I apologize to everyone that we didn't get a chance to answer your questions. Certainly, Fabian, you're a wealth of information, and I greatly appreciate the time you took to speak to us. And as you mentioned, I'd encourage anybody here that's interested to talk to the Aachen Hub more, or Fabian, to reach out directly and connect. I think there's a great opportunity for some collaborations between Canadian organizations and in Germany. With that, I'd love to just thank everybody for attending. I know it's busy out there, and I'm sure folks have meetings that they're late for. So thank you very much. I'd encourage anybody here that is interested, please again connect with Fabian directly. And as I mentioned earlier, the webinar will be posted on our website, calgaryhydrogen.ca, next week. If you want to chat with the Hub team in person or other folks in the hydrogen ecosystem, I'd encourage you to follow our LinkedIn page and attend our next Hub at the Pub on March 25th. So with that, Fabian, I'd say a big thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
All right, take care.